A cloth covered Wanjiru's mouth before she could scream. The sharp sting of a chemical burned her lungs. She struggled, her fists pounding, but the world blurred. The last thing she heard was the cook shouting her name. Then nothing.
A fox on the ridge, shadows at play, nine tails weaving through the break of day.
The Kim mansion in Seoul was not a home. It was a fortress. Tall stone walls wrapped around the sprawling estate, guarded day and night by men in black suits with sharp eyes and sharper guns. Inside, the halls stretched wide and cold, their polished marble floors reflecting the golden light of chandeliers. Every corner smelled faintly of power and fear, the kind of fear that came when one name commanded the city's underground. That name was Kim Sang-ho. The ruthless chairman of the Kim syndicate ruled with precision. To the outside world, he was a respected businessman with international ties. To those beneath the surface, he was the iron fist that controlled ports, trade, and entire districts of Seoul. People spoke his name carefully, never casually. In the world of crime, Sang-ho was both king and executioner. And under his roof lived a servant girl who did not belong. Her name was Wanjiru. She was from Kenya, brought to Korea under circumstances that few in the mansion ever bothered to ask about. All they knew was that the chairman had approved her employment himself. Some whispered she had been recommended by one of his overseas associates. Others believed she had simply been lucky. But luck was not the right word. Every morning, before the sun rose, Wanjiru tied her braided hair neatly, smoothed the plain black uniform across her slim frame, and began her work. She swept the endless halls, polished the silver, and laid the long dining table with the precision expected in the Kim household. She moved like a shadow, silent and efficient, never drawing attention to herself unless spoken to. Yet it was impossible not to notice her. Her beauty was not loud, but it was undeniable. Smooth dark skin that caught the glow of lantern light, sharp cheekbones softened by gentle eyes, and a quiet grace that set her apart from the hurried, nervous energy of the other servants. When she passed, people glanced twice. When she bowed her head, humility shone, but beneath it, there was something steady, unbroken. Wanjiru was beautiful, and in a house where beauty often meant danger, that truth was a double-edged sword. The first time Kim Sang-ho saw her, she was carrying a tray of tea into the study. Unlike his father, Sang-ho was not measured. He was young, mid-20s, restless, and dangerous in his own way. Where Sang-ho's power was rooted in discipline, Sang-ho's was rooted in impulse. He was known in the city's underground as reckless, quick to violence, and careless with privilege. And when his eyes fell on Wanjiru, something inside him shifted. He leaned casually against the doorway, watching as she placed the tea before his father with steady hands. She bowed and turned, her eyes brushing past him without lingering. She didn't smile. She didn't even flinch at his presence. That small indifference unsettled him. Most women looked at Sang-ho with fear, awe, or forced charm. Wanjiru looked at him as if he were nothing more than another shadow in the mansion. That sting of dismissal sparked something dangerous inside him, interest. That night, he asked one of the guards, the new servant, the African girl, "What's her name?" "Wanjiru," the guard replied. The name rolled off his tongue like a secret. Wanjiru. From then on, he noticed her everywhere, carrying fresh linens down the hall, kneeling to arrange flowers in the reception room, standing silently at the edge of gatherings, ready to serve. She never met his gaze, never sought his attention, and that very distance became an obsession. Sang-ho was used to taking, but this, he thought, would be different. Meanwhile, Wanjiru had her own silent war. She had learned quickly that survival in the Kim mansion required invisibility. Speak little, see less, obey always. But it wasn't only survival that kept her quiet. It was the complicated truth of her heart. For in her stillness, in her stolen glances, she found her eyes drawn not to the fiery sun, but to the father. Kim Sang-ho. He was a man carved from stone, tall, composed, with eyes that revealed nothing and a voice that commanded everything. Yet beneath that iron shell, Wanjiru had glimpsed something different. A man who paused when thanking her, who noticed when she worked too late into the night, who carried the loneliness of power like a hidden scar. It was dangerous, foolish even, but her heart softened toward him in secret. A servant's heart was supposed to be loyal only to duty. But Wanjira's heart had betrayed her, and chosen the one man it should never want. The father, not the son. And so the stage was set. A ruthless mafia heir, burning with obsession for the servant who showed him no affection. And a servant girl whose quiet heart leaned toward the father who commanded empires. The storm had not yet broken, but its clouds were already gathering over the Kim household. The salon smelled of lilies and polished wood, a scent that could have been softer were it not for the underlying metallic tang of money and power. Chandeliers threw halos over the heads of the city's elite as they drank, laughed, and bartered in polished sentences. Outside, Seoul's lights were a glittering sea. Inside, the Kim mansion held a different current, one of calculation and quiet hunger. Wanjira moved through that current like someone walking a shallow river. Cautious, deliberate, never letting her footing slip. She carried a tray with crystal glasses and small saucers of dessert, eyes lowered by habit. She had learned long ago that in a room like this, attention could become a demand, and a demand could become ownership. Her hands were steady. Her back did not bend under the weight of the gazes she received. She simply learned to work around them, to keep her dignity folded like a secret inside. Kim Sahu watched everything. He watched the businessmen's smiles, the compliments offered and taken, the way rivals measured each other with perfect politeness. He watched with a predator's patience, but his eyes kept finding the same small, steady figure moving between the tables. There was an economy to her motion that irked him. She gave nothing away, offered no invitation, and her face never betrayed curiosity or fear. That reserve was not passive to him, it was a challenge. After the guests left, and the staff began clearing away the remnants of the evening, Sahu found his chance. The room emptied until it was just him and Wanjiru and the bouquet of lilies, their whiteness exaggerated in the low light. He came down the stairs like a man returning to a claim, smooth and deliberate. "Wanjiru," he said, low enough that the echo didn't travel. She paused, refocused, and placed a saucer on the side table. "Yes, Mr. Kim Sahu." Her voice was small, careful. He moved closer than necessary. Up close, her skin looked like burnished wood under candlelight. Up close, the measurement of her features seemed to him to be a map he wanted to read. "You never look at anyone in the room," he said. "No hunger, no fear. It's irritating." Her eyes slid to his only for a moment, then away. "I focus on my work. For now." He let that linger like a promise and a threat. "Work can be flexible." His smile was slow and practiced. "We could arrange your life to be very different." Wanjira's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression composed. "I do not wish for favors." He chuckled, a low sound that hid menace. "You should not be so proud, Wanjiru. Pride makes people reckless. And I do not like recklessness around me." There was something almost boyish in the way he pressed his air of entitlement into the conversation. But the danger was real. He had the power to make life easier or unbearable with a whisper. She had seen such whispers change the color of lives in the mansion. She had seen men crumble under a single word from him. So she answered with the only armor she had, restraint. "Sir, I only wish to do my work." "And yet you do more than your work," he said, eyes sharpening. "You capture attention." Her jaw tightened just a fraction. "That is not my intent." He stepped back, but his gaze did not follow. Intent doesn't matter. Outcomes do. He tipped his head, like a man appraising an object. "Tell me this. What does the chairman give you that I cannot? Why do you allow your eyes to soften for him?" At that name, her composure finally flickered. She had practiced her careful smiles and quiet nods with Sang-ho because the chairman, for reasons she did not fully understand, had been kinder in small, dangerous ways. He had handed her a half-hour off once when a storm stranded the transport drivers. He'd adjusted a schedule so she could speak on the phone with a cousin. He'd once, without comment, left an unfamiliar book beside her task list. Small mercies in a house that gave none. "It is not about giving," she answered softly. "He treats me like a person." Sahu's lips curled. "A person." He let the words sink into the silence like a bitter pill. "So it is softness you want." He leaned in again, almost carelessly. "Men like my father, he gives you space. He gives you kindness. But I want truth." I want confession. Admit it, you prefer him. Wanjiru's fingers tightened on the tray. She could say nothing. If she admitted it, she would have to watch the way his face changed, the way a man accustomed to taking would respond. If she lied, she would invite deeper control. Both roads led to danger. Before she could answer, a voice cut the air. Sahu. The owner of that voice stopped them both. Kim Sang-ho appeared as he often did. Not with fanfare, but with the authority that made the air itself still. The room seemed to bend toward him. He wore a dark robe, his hair threaded with silver, and his eyes carried an unusual weariness. He did not need to ask who had been speaking. His presence was question and answer in one. Father, Sahu said with a forced calm. Then he forced a polite bow as if the conversation had been nothing. Sang-ho's gaze passed to Wanjiru, then landed on Sahu. There was no immediate rebuke, only an observation. Why are you both still up? Clearing up, sir, Wanjiru answered, voice steady but respectful. Sang-ho's look softened subtly when it returned to her. You work late. Rest when you can. Her cheeks warmed at the concern, and Sahu watched the exchange with something like hunger and something like contempt. He always notices small things, he muttered later, once Sang-ho had stepped away. That man has a way of watering seedling loyalty. He keeps shadows where he wants them. Sahu's words were not entirely a complaint. The idea that his father's quiet attentions could shape loyalties and tilt invisible balances stoked his temper. He wanted the loud impact. His father made claims with whispers that took root. It was a method Sahu both resented and secretly envied. In the days that followed, Sahu's actions became deliberate. He sent for Wanjiru more often, to arrange his clothes, to set his table, to fetch a book or a cigarette he had misplaced. Each task came with a micro-insult or a lingering look that carved at the small safety she had built. He tested boundaries, using casual demands to stretch the fragile edges. But Wanjiru would not give him what he wanted. She answered with politeness and distance, like a practiced shield. In a house where a man could buy favor, her refusal was a kind of small defiance. It infuriated him. Yet the more he pushed, the more he began to notice something unnerving. Sang-ho's interest. It was not the possessive glare Sahu expected. It was quieter, less volatile. Sang-ho would call for tea and make sure Wanjiru was not overworked. He would glance up during a meal and, to Sahu's fury, soften his tone when he thanked her. The chairman's attention was not the loud, hungry claim Sahu craved. It was a presence that offered safety and validation in equal measure. That difference made Sahu savage. He wanted to be the one who could alter a life by force, not the one whose own father's quiet regard could alter it with a word. Seeing Sang-ho show a tenderness that Sahu had never managed to earn lit a new, cruel curiosity. If the boy could not win her with power, perhaps he could take her with it. And so Sahu's want shifted, from intrigue to the sharpest edges of obsession. He did not yet move to violence. That would come later. For now, he moved in smaller ways. Closed doors where she might walk, whispered comments to the staff that isolated her, little tests to see if she could be rattled. Each failed attempt only fed the fire. Wanjiru kept her head down, but inside the calm there was a storm. She felt the weight of Sahu's attention like a hand at her back, always reminding her of a man's ability to turn the world to ash. She also felt Sang-ho's quiet look like a small harbor, a place where dignity could be kept intact, even if only barely. The mansion hummed with an invisible tension now, one built on glances and withheld words. The three of them orbited one another in a gravity that would soon become destructive. The first pull had been made. The rest of the world had no idea it would not end gently. Morning at the Kim estate was never soft. The house woke not with sunlight but with footsteps, orders, the growl of engines. Men in black suits moved in and out like shadows, and though the windows showed the sky lightning over Seoul, the mansion felt perpetually enclosed in its own storm. Wanjiru rose before dawn, as she always did. The uniform was neat, her hair braided and pinned back, her silence polished. The routine was her shield, tasks done correctly, nothing out of place, no reason for anyone to call her name. But in this household, her name had begun to carry weight. At breakfast, Kim Sang-ho sat at the head of the long oak table, his presence dignified but heavy with authority. His lieutenants sat around him, offering updates about shipments, negotiations, and rivals that dared to breathe too loudly in their direction. Wanjiru poured tea with practiced grace, her movements measured. She felt the men's glances, a servant, foreign, beautiful, silent, but ignored them. Then came his voice. Wanjiru. Not loud, but clear enough that every eye lifted. Yes, Chairman Kim. Sit. The word was a command, but not harsh. She froze, tray in her hands, unsure whether she had heard correctly. Servants never sat at the family table. Ever. The lieutenants exchanged looks. Some smirked. Some frowned. Sahu, however, went rigid. Wanjiru bowed quickly, her voice careful. I must continue my duties. Sangho interrupted with a firm, sit. The head butler cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable, but dared not object. Slowly, Wanjiru placed the tray down and obeyed, sitting at the far corner of the table. She kept her eyes lowered, hands folded tightly in her lap. Conversation resumed, but the atmosphere had shifted. The chairman had made a statement, not only to her, but to everyone present. Sahu's gaze cut into her like a blade. He watched the way his father placed a piece of food onto Wanjiru's plate without looking at her directly, the way she whispered thank you in return. A small act, but one that told volumes. After the meeting dispersed, Sahu cornered her in the corridor. His voice was quiet, but the venom in it could have burned through steel. Do you enjoy humiliating me? Her brows knit. Sir, I did nothing. You Saturday. His jaw tightened. At his table. At my father's table. I was commanded, she replied, her voice steady despite the cold crawling into her spine. Sahu stepped closer. Too close, his breath sharp against her cheek. He is testing me, using you to measure how far I will bend. And you, his eyes flicked over her face, her mouth, her braids pulled neatly back. You're letting him. I am only doing my work, she repeated firmly. You call it work. His smile was cruel now. I call it betrayal. Before his temper could spiral further, another presence cut in. Sahu. Again, the voice that froze everything. Kim Sang-ho stood at the end of the corridor, hands clasped behind his back, gaze sharp as glass. Father, Sahu said, masking his fury with a bow. Come with me. Sang-ho's tone left no room for refusal. Sahu shot Wanjiru one last look, a promise that this was not over, before following. Later that night, Wanjiru sat alone in the servants' quarters. The book Sang-ho had once given her resting in her lap. She had not meant to draw attention from either man. Her only goal was survival. Yet the air of the house pressed against her from both sides. Sahu's hunger, Sang-ho's quiet regard. Her heart whispered toward the chairman. Not because of wealth or protection, but because in his presence she felt seen. Not as a possession, not as prey, but as a human being. That was dangerous. More dangerous than Sahu's temper. Because in this world, affection was another kind of weapon. Meanwhile, in his private chamber, Kim Sang-ho poured himself a glass of aged soju. Sahu stood opposite him, restless, coiled like a spring. You let her sit, Sahu said finally, breaking the silence. I told her to sit, Sang-ho corrected. He sipped calmly. There is a difference. Why her? The words came out almost like a growl. Sang-ho set the glass down. His eyes, sharp but unreadable, fixed on his son. Because strength is not always shown in how you command men. Sometimes it is shown in how you treat the powerless. Sahu's fists clenched. You treat her as if she is more than what she is. And what is she? Sang-ho asked, voice calm but edged. Sahu opened his mouth, then shut it. The question twisted in his chest, because he had no answer that would not reveal his own hunger, his own obsession. Sang-ho studied him for a long moment, then spoke again. You should be careful, Sahu. A man who cannot master his own desires is not fit to master anything else. The word struck like a blade. Sahu bowed stiffly, but inside fury roared. This was no longer about Wanjiru. This was about power. About his father holding something he wanted, something he could not have, and reminding him of it at every turn. And in Sahu's world, what he could not have, he would find a way to take. The first snow of the season fell over Seoul, layering the city in quiet white. Inside the Kim mansion, warmth radiated from polished wood and glowing chandeliers. But beneath the surface, the cold was sharper than anything outside. Wanjiru felt it every time she entered a room where Sahu lingered. His silence was heavier now, more dangerous than his words. He had not cornered her again since that night in the corridor, but his eyes followed her like a shadow. When she poured his tea, his gaze lingered on her fingers. When she served his food, he watched her lips as if they held an answer to a question she had not agreed to hear. She kept her head down, but inside she was restless. Her instincts told her he was planning something. That evening, Kim Sang-ho summoned her to the study. The study was his sanctuary, walls lined with leather-bound books, old maps, and artifacts from places far beyond Korea. The scent of sandalwood filled the room. Wonjiru stepped in, tray in her hands, and bowed. "You asked for me, Chairman Kim?" He nodded toward the table. "Tea." She poured it silently, placing the delicate porcelain cup before him. Sang-ho didn't drink immediately. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her in the way he did with men who sat across from him to negotiate. It made her pulse flutter. "You work without complaint," he said finally. "Day after day." "It is my duty, sir." "Duty is one thing," he countered, his deep voice steady. "But you carry yourself as though the weight is more than most could bear." Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to give a simple answer that would deflect his gaze, but his eyes held her in place. They were not harsh, not demanding, simply searching. And something inside her wanted to be seen. She lowered her voice. "Where I come from, Chairman Kim, life teaches you to endure. Complaints are wasted breath." For the first time, his expression softened, truly softened, in a way that stripped the steel from his features. "Kenya has left its mark on you." Her chest ached. "Yes, sir." Silence stretched, but it was not uncomfortable. Sang-ho reached for his tea and sipped slowly. "You may leave." She bowed and turned, but his voice followed. "Wonjiru." She looked back. "You are not invisible here." Her heart stumbled in her chest. She bowed again more deeply, and left quickly before the warmth in her face betrayed her. From the shadows at the end of the hall, Sahu had seen everything. He had followed her, not openly, but with the patience of someone whose obsession had grown teeth. He had watched her enter his father's study, watched the door close, watched the faint trace of light spill under it for far too long. And when she emerged, her face carried something he had never put there, a quiet flush, a softness. It was all the proof he needed. His father, his ruthless, calculating father, was taking what should belong to him. That night, in the privacy of his own chambers, Sahu began to plot. He sat at his desk, cigarette smoke curling around him, papers spread wide but forgotten. His thoughts circled only one target. He had spent years proving himself to men who never saw him as anything but the son of the great Kim Sang-ho. He had clawed his way into their respect with violence, with blood. But now, his father had turned his gaze toward a servant girl, a foreigner, and in doing so had made Sahu feel small again. That humiliation would not stand. He tapped ash into a crystal tray and murmured to himself, "If she won't choose me, I'll make her." Meanwhile, in the quiet of her narrow bed, Wonjiru stared at the ceiling. Her heart still carried the echo of Sang-ho's words. "You are not invisible here." No one had ever said that to her before. In her homeland, she had been another girl in a crowded village. Here in Korea, she was just a servant in a house of power. But in that moment, under his gaze, she had felt like more. It terrified her, because feelings in this house were not blessings. They were traps. The next morning, the trap began to close. Wonjiru was carrying a basket of freshly laundered linens when a hand caught her wrist, pulling her into a side corridor. The basket clattered to the floor, sheets spilling across the tiles. She gasped and turned, finding Sahu's face far too close. "Sir, don't call me that," he snapped, though his grip tightened. His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "You went to his study." Her stomach sank. "I was summoned." His jaw flexed. "And what did you give him?" The question sent a chill through her. "Nothing." He asked for tea. Sahu leaned in, his eyes searching hers with a feverish intensity. "He doesn't ask for tea. He asks for loyalty. He asks for pieces of you until you belong to him. That's how he's always done it." His breath was hot against her cheek. "But I won't let him have you." Her pulse hammered in her ears. She forced her voice steady. "You cannot stop what does not exist." He stared at her, his grip trembling with restrained fury. Then, slowly, he released her, letting the words fall like a blade. "We'll see." As he walked away, leaving her shaken among the scattered sheets, Wonjiru knew the house had changed. Kim Sang-ho's quiet care had placed her in a dangerous light. Kim Sahu's obsession had turned into something sharper. And she was caught between them, in a triangle drawn with blood. The mansion breathed differently now. Whispers spread like smoke among the staff. The young master was restless, his moods sharper than knives. Orders were barked, punishments handed down for the smallest mistakes. A cup misplaced, a dish delayed. Servants trembled when his footsteps approached. Wonjiru felt it most of all. Since the night he caught her in the corridor, Kim Sahu's eyes had been relentless. His words were few, but his silence was more suffocating than shouting. She learned to sense him before he entered a room. The air thickened, her pulse quickened, and always his gaze found her. She tried to stay out of sight, bury herself in work, but Sahu had other plans. The trap was set 3 days later. The staff had been summoned to the Great Hall for inspection, something Sang-ho demanded once a month. Every servant stood in neat rows, uniform spotless, posture rigid. Sang-ho walked slowly down the line, his sharp eyes missing nothing. When he reached Wonjiru, he paused. "Wonjiru." She lowered her gaze. "Yes, Chairman Kim. You've worked without pause these past weeks. Take tomorrow morning for yourself. Rest." The murmur among the servants was almost inaudible, but she felt the shift in the air. A servant being granted rest was unheard of. She bowed deeply. "Thank you, sir." From the corner of her eye, she caught Sahu's expression, a smile that did not reach his eyes. The next morning, Wonjiru followed the order. She rose later than usual, dressed plainly, and stepped into the garden to breathe the cold air. The estate's gardens were vast, with winding stone paths and sculpted trees dusted in snow. For the first time since arriving in Korea, she felt a moment of peace, until the crunch of footsteps behind her shattered it. She turned, heart sinking. Sahu. He looked almost casual, dressed in a black coat, gloved hands in his pockets, but his eyes burned with something that made her throat tighten. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said. "The chairman told me to rest," she answered carefully. "Rest," he repeated, stepping closer. "He gives you rest. He gives you kindness. Tell me, Wonjiru, what do you give him in return?" Her stomach nodded. "Nothing. I serve as I am required." "You lie." His voice was soft, but it carried venom. "I see it in your eyes when he speaks to you. You soften for him. You belong to him already, don't you?"
Kindly subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever I drop a new video.
Her lips parted, but no words came. Sahu closed the distance, towering over her. His gloved hand brushed against her braid, tracing it with deliberate slowness. "Do you know how it feels, watching my father take what should be mine?" His jaw clenched. "Do you know how it feels to want something that looks at you as if you are invisible?" Wonjiru stepped back, her voice steady despite the fear surging through her veins. "You are mistaken, sir. I belong to no one." The words struck him like a slap. For a moment, his face twisted, anger, desire, humiliation all colliding. Then suddenly he smiled. "Then I'll make you mine." Before she could react, 2 men appeared from the path, Sahu's men, the ones who followed him like shadows. "Take her," he ordered quietly. Wonjiru's heart pounded. "No." The men moved forward, but before they could touch her, another voice thundered across the garden. "Sahu." All 3 froze. Kim Sang-ho stood at the top of the stone steps, his presence more commanding than a dozen guards. His eyes, sharp as winter steel, fixed on his son. "What are you doing?" For the first time, Sahu faltered. His men stepped back immediately, heads lowered. But he did not. He straightened, meeting his father's gaze. "Teaching her where she belongs," he said coldly. "Enough." Sang-ho's voice was low, lethal. "She is under my protection." The words were final, but they cracked something in Sahu. Protection. His father had spoken it openly, in front of him, in front of the men. It was no longer subtle, no longer whispers in study rooms or silent kindnesses. It was a declaration. Sahu's fists trembled at his sides. He wanted to shout, to strike, but he could do neither under his father's glare. So he bowed stiffly, his voice dripping with false respect. "As you wish, father." He turned on his heel and stalked away, his men following. Wanjiru stood frozen, breath shallow, until Sangho descended the steps. His eyes softened when they reached her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head quickly. "No, sir." His jaw tightened, anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. "From now on, you will not walk the gardens alone. Do you understand?" "Yes, Chairman Kim." But inside, Wanjiru knew the truth. She was no longer safe in the mansion. She had been marked by Sahu's hunger, by Sangho's protection, by a rivalry that would not end quietly. And in the game of father and son, she was the piece both refused to lose. Snow continued to fall over Seoul, muting the world outside, but inside the Kim mansion tension ran like fire under ice. Everyone felt it. Servants moved with hushed caution, guards kept their eyes lowered, and the butler carried out his duties with a stiffness that betrayed unease. Because everyone had seen it, the way Kim Sangho had declared, without hesitation, that Wanjiru was under his protection. For a servant, that was no ordinary statement. It was dangerous. From that day forward, Sangho's orders concerning Wanjiru changed. She was no longer permitted to walk the gardens alone. A guard shadowed her quietly when she went to the market with the other staff. Her duties were adjusted. She now served directly under the head butler, which kept her closer to the family wing. But the greatest change came in the evenings. More often, she was summoned to the chairman's study. At first, it was under the pretense of serving tea, arranging books, or delivering reports from the housekeeper. But gradually the reasons grew thinner. Sometimes Sangho asked her to read aloud from one of the leather-bound volumes. Sometimes he asked about her homeland, the landscapes of Kenya, the foods she missed, the language she spoke with her family. And sometimes he simply asked her to sit while he worked in silence, as if her presence itself steadied him. One evening, as Wanjiru folded documents he had finished reviewing, Sangho spoke without lifting his gaze. "My son is reckless." The words froze her hands in mid-motion. "You must be cautious," he continued. "He has grown up in a world where taking is easier than asking. It has shaped him." She lowered her eyes. "Yes, Chairman Kim." For a long moment, silence stretched. Then Sangho's voice softened, unusual for a man whose commands usually cut like blades. "You have endured much, haven't you?" Her throat tightened. "I only do what is required." "That is not an answer." His eyes lifted, holding hers across the desk. "What is it that you want, Wanjiru?" The question pierced her. She had not been asked what she wanted in years. Not since leaving Kenya. Not since binding her life to servitude in this house of power. She looked down, voice barely above a whisper. "I want to be free." The admission startled even her. It was raw, fragile. Sangho's expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes, a recognition, almost a respect. He leaned back in his chair, his presence steady. "Freedom is not given in this world. It must be carved." Her lips parted, but she could not find words. Then, softly, he added, "I will not let my son destroy you." Her chest ached at the weight of the promise. She bowed deeply, unable to trust her voice. But across the mansion, Sahu's fury only grew. He had spies among the servants, loyal ones who reported everything they saw. He knew Wanjiru was in his father's study night after night. He knew she lingered longer than necessary. He knew his father's eyes followed her with a softness no one else in the world had ever received. Each report stoked the fire inside him until it threatened to consume reason. In his private chamber, Sahu smashed a glass against the wall, shards scattering across the floor. His men stood back, silent, knowing better than to speak. "She doesn't even look at me," Sahu hissed, pacing like a caged predator. "But for him," he stopped, breathing hard. "For him, she glows." One of his men spoke carefully. "What will you do, young master?" Sahu's smile was sharp, dangerous. "If she wants freedom, I'll give her a taste of it. And then I'll take it away. That way she'll understand what it means to belong to me." Meanwhile, Wanjiru lay awake in her small room, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed Sangho's words. "I will not let my son destroy you." He had said it with such certainty, as if his will could rewrite the dangers surrounding her. And perhaps it could. He was Kim Sang-ho after all. His power shaped the lives of hundreds. But in the quiet of the night, Wonjiru admitted to herself the truth she feared most. Her heart no longer belonged to herself. It beat faster when he entered the room. It softened when his voice called her name. It sought safety in his presence, even though safety was an illusion in this house. And that truth, if Sahu ever confirmed it, would be the spark to ignite war between father and son. The week passed with uneasy quiet, but it was the kind of silence that precedes a storm. Kim Sang-ho remained steady in his routines. Meetings with lieutenants, late nights in his study, dinners eaten with deliberate calm. Yet beneath that calm, he sharpened his watchfulness. He had seen his son's hunger before in business and violence. But this time it was different. This time it was personal, reckless, and dangerous. He doubled the guards' patrols. He instructed the butler that Wonjiru should not leave the estate without his permission. And still, he felt the weight of inevitability pressing against him. Because Kim Sahu was his son, and a son who has already decided to take, will find a way. The chance came on a gray afternoon. Wonjiru was tasked with accompanying the cook to the market to purchase supplies for the week. It should have been safe. 2 guards followed them, and the market was bustling with ordinary life. But safety in Seoul was an illusion when the Kim family's shadows stretched this far. As Wonjiru moved between stalls, choosing vegetables, she felt it. Eyes. The prickling sensation of being watched. She tried to ignore it, but when she glanced toward the edge of the street, she saw them. Men in dark coats, too still among the crowd. Her breath quickened. Moments later, the crowd shifted and chaos bloomed. A cart overturned, scattering produce across the street. People shouted. The guards pushed forward instinctively to control the disruption. That was when the men moved. A cloth covered Wonjiru's mouth before she could scream. The sharp sting of a chemical burned her lungs. She struggled, her fists pounding, but the world blurred. The last thing she heard was the cook shouting her name. Then nothing. When she woke, it was to darkness. Her head throbbed, her wrists bound, and the faint hum of an engine told her she was in a moving vehicle. She struggled against the ropes, panic rising, until a familiar voice cut through the dark. Finally, Kim Sahu sat across from her, his face half lit by the dim glow of a single bulb inside the van. His smile was not kind, it was sharp, triumphant. You don't know how long I've waited for this. Her heart pounded. What are you doing? Where are you taking me? Somewhere my father's shadow doesn't reach, he said simply. Somewhere you'll finally see me. She shook her head fiercely. You have no right. No right. His voice cracked with emotion, half fury, half desperation. I have been invisible to you. I have given orders, I have power, but you only soften for him. For him. His fists clenched. I'll show you, Wonjiru. I'll show you I'm not a boy in my father's shadow. Her voice trembled, but she forced steel into it. You cannot force love. Something in his eyes flickered, but he smothered it quickly. Love isn't given. It's taken. You'll understand soon. Back at the mansion, chaos erupted the moment the guards returned without her. The butler fell to his knees, stammering apologies. The cook wept, insisting it all happened too fast. Sang-ho listened in silence, but his silence was the kind that suffocated. Finally, he spoke. His voice was cold, deliberate. It was my son. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared to confirm what they all suspected. Sang-ho stood, his presence filling the hall. Bring the cars. Every man loyal to me moves now. One of the lieutenants hesitated. Chairman, if it is the young master. He is no master, Sang-ho cut in, his tone sharp as steel. Not while I draw breath. If he has taken her, then he has declared war against me. For the first time in years, those who followed him saw not just the ruthless strategist, but the man stripped bare of patience. This was no longer about business or reputation. This was about Wonjiru, the woman who had pierced through the armor of his life, the woman he had silently vowed to protect. And Kim Sang-ho did not lose what he vowed to protect. Meanwhile, in the van, Wonjiru's mind raced. She tugged at the ropes until her skin burned, but the knots held. Sahu watched her, his expression unreadable now. You'll see, he said softly, almost to himself. You'll see I'm not like him. But Wanjiru knew the truth. He was exactly like his father in one way. When Kim Sahu wanted something, he would burn the world to have it. And in that truth, she also knew something else. Kim Sang-ho would come. The only question was, how much blood would be spilled before he arrived? The convoy of black sedans cut through Seoul like a blade through silk, engines humming low and dangerous. Inside the lead car, Kim Sang-ho sat with a stillness that was more frightening than rage. His eyes were fixed ahead, his fingers tapping once against the leather armrest, the only sign of the storm brewing within him. Beside him, his most trusted lieutenant gave the update. We traced the van to the outskirts, Chairman. An abandoned textile warehouse near Incheon Port. Heavy security. At least 20 men inside. Sang-ho's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. Then 20 men will not leave that building alive. Inside the warehouse, Wanjiru sat bound to a chair in the center of a cavernous room. Dust floated in shafts of moonlight cutting through broken windows. Her wrists ached from the ropes, but her eyes stayed steady, burning with defiance. Kim Sahu paced before her, restless, his steps echoing against concrete. Do you know what it's like, he said, his voice rising. To live as a shadow? To always be measured against someone else's power, someone else's name. Wanjiru met his eyes, unflinching. Then step out of his shadow the right way. Not like this. Sahu stopped, staring at her as though she had spoken a foreign language. You think it's that simple? That he'll ever let me be more than his son? His hands curled into fists. No. The only way is to destroy him, to take what he wants most. Her heart tightened, but her voice was steady. I'm not a prize for you to win. He leaned closer, his face inches from hers, his breath sharp. You will be. Before he could say more, a guard rushed into the room, breathless. Young master. They're here. Sahu froze, then a twisted smile crossed his face. Perfect. Outside, headlights cut through the dark as Sang-ho's men surrounded the warehouse. Silencers clicked onto gun barrels. The air was thick with tension, the kind that precedes blood. Sang-ho stepped out of his car, straightening his coat with deliberate calm. His men waited for his signal, but he raised a hand. He's mine. The doors of the warehouse groaned as they opened, and Sang-ho walked inside alone. Father and son stood face to face across the wide floor. Sahu's smile was cold, mocking. You came for her. I knew you would. Sang-ho's gaze flicked to Wanjiru, bound, frightened but unbroken. Something in his chest tightened, but his eyes returned to his son. Release her, and I may yet leave you standing. Sahu laughed bitterly. Always the same. Commanding. Untouchable. Do you even hear yourself? Even now, you speak like I'm a child. His hand gestured toward Wanjiru. She'll never love you. She belongs to me. Sang-ho's voice dropped into something darker than anger. She belongs to no one. That truth rang out, silencing the room. Even the guards shifted uneasily. But Sahu's face twisted, his pride cut deeper than any blade. With a sharp motion, he drew his gun and pointed it at Wanjiru. Then watch me take her from you. Sang-ho didn't flinch. His hand moved with practiced precision, his own gun drawn and aimed squarely at his son's chest. Put it down, Sahu. For a moment, the warehouse held its breath. Father and son mirror images. One seasoned by decades of ruthless control, the other consumed by restless fire. Wanjiru's heart pounded so loud she thought it would break her ribs. Shoot me, Sahu dared, his voice trembling between rage and desperation. Do it, father. Kill your own blood for her. Sang-ho's eyes were steel, but there was a shadow of pain in them. You stopped being my son the moment you made her your hostage. The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like eternity. And then a shot rang out. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse, echoing against the steel beams. For a moment, time stood still. Wanjiru gasped, her heart seizing in her chest. She couldn't see who had fired first. Then Sahu staggered back, the gun slipping from his hand. His eyes widened in disbelief as crimson spread across his shoulder. You, he choked, staring at Sang-ho. You really shot me. Sang-ho lowered his weapon slightly, his gaze steady but heavy with sorrow. I aimed to stop you, not kill you. You left me no choice. Sahu pressed his hand to the wound, anger flashing through the pain. Always taking everything from me. Even now. His eyes flicked to Wanjiru, bound and pale but defiant. You'll never have her. I'll make sure of it. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunged for the fallen gun. No, Wanjiru screamed. But Sangho was faster. A second shot rang out, this one hitting Sahu square in the leg. He collapsed, the weapon skittering uselessly across the floor. Guards rushed in, weapons raised, but Sangho lifted a hand. Stand down. The men froze, watching their leader stride across the floor to his fallen son. Sangho's shadow loomed over Sahu, who lay writhing, fury in his eyes despite the blood staining the ground. You are my blood, Sangho said, his voice low and edged with steel. But blood does not excuse betrayal. From this day, you are no heir of mine. The words cut deeper than the bullets. Sahu's breath hitched, his pride breaking beneath the weight of disownment. Father, he rasped, but Sangho turned away, the finality in his posture undeniable. Sangho knelt beside Wanjiru, his hands surprisingly gentle as he untied the ropes biting into her wrists. Her skin was raw, her breath shaking. Are you hurt? He asked. Her eyes brimmed with unshed tears, but she shook her head. No, not anymore. For a moment their gazes locked, hers trembling with fear and relief, his with quiet determination. In that moment, the warehouse, the blood, even the men watching faded. It was just them, a woman pulled into a world of shadows, and the man who would burn that world to keep her safe. Sangho rose, pulling her gently to her feet. You're safe now. I promise you, Wanjiru, no one will ever take you from me again. The weight of his vow pressed into the air, unshakable, undeniable. Behind them, Sahu's labored breathing filled the silence, bitter and broken. This isn't over. Sangho glanced back once, his eyes cold. It is. Then he led Wanjiru out of the warehouse, his men falling in behind them. The night was heavy with the scent of gunpowder and betrayal, but for Wanjiru, the air outside felt like freedom. Fragile, fleeting, yet real. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in that moment she knew one thing. She was no longer just a servant in the Kim household. She was the center of a storm, one that had changed everything. The night after the warehouse felt like a lifetime compressed into hours. By dawn, the Kim mansion was locked down. Extra guards patrolled the gates, whispers ran through the halls, and the staff avoided speaking above a murmur. Word spread quickly. The young master had defied his father and lost. Wanjiru sat quietly in a guest room, the one Sangho had ordered prepared for her after they returned. The silk bedding, the soft light, the warmth, none of it eased the storm inside her. Her wrists still bore faint red marks from the ropes. Her heart still raced with echoes of the gunshots. She replayed it all, Sahu's eyes filled with obsession, Sangho's gun steady and unflinching, the words that severed father and son. From this day, you are no heir of mine. A shiver ran through her. She had become the wedge that split blood, the spark that lit fire to an empire. Sangho entered without ceremony, his presence filling the room. His coat was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, but his composure was the same, cold steel wrapped in calm. You should eat, he said simply, nodding toward the tray the maids had left untouched. I'm not hungry, Wanjiru murmured, her eyes fixed on the floor. He studied her in silence, then walked closer. You think this is your fault. Her lips parted, but no words came. The truth was too heavy. It is not, he said firmly, his voice slicing through her doubt. Sahu's choices are his own. Weakness disguised as love is still weakness. Wanjiru finally looked up at him. But he was your son. The faintest shadow crossed Sangho's eyes. And you are the woman he should never have touched. His words, so blunt, sent heat rushing to her cheeks. She lowered her gaze again, uncertain. He stepped closer still, until his presence was a wall around her, unyielding and protective. You've been pulled into a world that devours the weak. But I will not let it devour you. Her throat tightened. Why me? For a rare moment, his expression softened, a flicker of humanity breaking through his iron mask. Because you remind me I still have something worth protecting. Her breath caught, and silence stretched between them, filled with the unspoken. Meanwhile, Sahu lay in a guarded hospital room, his leg bandaged, his shoulder stitched. Rage gnawed at him, fiercer than the pain. The echo of his father's words haunted him, stripping him bare. No heir of mine. He clenched his fists, vowing in the hollow of that sterile room that he would rise again, not as his father's son, but as his own man. And when he did, he would reclaim what had been taken from him, even if it meant war. Back at the mansion, Sang-ho stood by the window of his study late that night, watching the city lights burn in the distance. Behind him, Wanjiru entered quietly, unsure if she should disturb him. He didn't turn, but he spoke, his voice lower than usual. "Stay close to me, Wanjiru. The world outside will not forgive what has happened. Neither will my son." Her heart pounded, but she stepped forward, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Then I'll stay." Finally, he turned, and for the first time, the iron mask slipped enough to reveal a man. Not just a kingpin, not just a father, but a man who had chosen her, against the rules of blood and loyalty. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was charged, alive, carrying the weight of what had been lost, and the fragile, dangerous promise of what could still be gained. And so, the story of Wanjiru, the Kenyan servant who crossed the threshold of shadows, was no longer about survival. It was about love forged in fire, betrayal carved into bloodlines, and a future where every choice would carry the weight of empire. For in the Kim household, nothing remained untouched. Not even the heart. Spring crept slowly into Seoul. The cherry blossoms bloomed, scattering pink petals across the city like fleeting promises. At the Kim mansion, life resumed its rhythm, outwardly calm, but under the surface forever changed. Wanjiru no longer wore the uniform of a servant. Instead, she moved through the house with quiet authority, her presence acknowledged, her dignity restored. The staff bowed lower to her now, not because of fear, but because she had survived what few could. She had the chairman's protection, and something more unspoken, something no one dared to name. Every evening, she joined Sang-ho in his study, where business papers lay untouched while they shared tea. He never called it love. He didn't need to. In the way his eyes softened when they met hers, in the way his voice dropped when speaking to her, she knew. For a man who had conquered everything, Wanjiru was the one thing he chose, not because of power but despite it. Far across the city, in a private hospital ward, Kim Sahu stared at his reflection in the window. The scars on his shoulder and leg were constant reminders of his father's bullet and his father's betrayal. But his eyes burned with the same fire, sharper now, tempered by pain. He no longer spoke of love when he thought of Wanjiru. He spoke of vengeance, of reclamation, of building an empire that would eclipse his father's. "Wait for me," he whispered into the night, though whether it was a promise to her or a threat to his father, even he no longer knew. And so, two paths stretched into the future. One where Wanjiru walked beside Sang-ho, bound not by chains but by choice, learning to live in the shadows without losing herself. The other where Sahu sharpened his fury, preparing to return, not as a son, not as an heir, but as a storm. The petals of spring scattered, beautiful and fragile, reminding them all that peace, like blossoms, never lasted long. Because in the world of the Kim family, love was war. And war was never far away. Thank you for watching. Kindly subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so as to get notified when we drop new stories. Like and share to family and friends, and finally tell us where you're watching from in the comment section, and we will see you in our next video.